Greetings, Tony Mobley here, and a new conversation with Tony Mobley tonight. And tonight, my special guest is Mr. Todd Reynolds. Why are we here? We're here because life has provided me the opportunity to have real conversations with real people. So that is what we will try to do. Tonight, we're speaking to my friend Todd Reynolds, as I said, and we hope to help others with these conversations that we're having. But I need your help. And this is why I need your help. I need you to go to conversationswithTonyMobley.com. And there you will see a registration for the Mukana chat. So what is Mukana? Mukana is a chat platform where you will be able to ask your questions and you'll be able to vote your questions up and down. And so I hope that you will take the time to go to conversationswithTonyMobley.com so that you can register and participate in our question and answers and vote your question up and down, depending on how well you want that question to be asked. Okay, and so if you like that and you like our past conversations, I ask that you like and subscribe on YouTube and set that bell to all the notifications that remind you of upcoming conversations. So with that, we are now going to go to Mr. Todd Reynolds. Thank you, Todd, for being here tonight. Thank you, Todd.
It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you tonight, Tony.
Thank you, sir. So if you would just want to share some initial thoughts with you, and then we'll go to my questions first. We'll go to my questions first, and then we'll get the questions from the Mukana chat.
Excellent. So some initial thoughts. Well, let's see. I would say maybe you want me to share a little bit about myself and and who I am. Is that the initial intent?
Well, the fact of the matter is, my first question is going to be, who is Todd Reynolds?
Okay, so we should save that. So I'll go with the initial thoughts. It's been a fiery day. Lots has happened today, and for the next hour and a half, I get to be with my friends, I get to be with you, and I get to just sit down and put it all away. So I'm super, super happy to talk with you, Tony, and to share with you. This is the first time we will actually have time to speak personally, you and me, after having known each other for a number of months now. And I'm so happy to be with every single person on this screen for whom I have great, 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 great regard.
Well, thank you so much for that. And interesting enough, Todd made some requests. So some of you have been requested to be here. And so since he has made the request for you to be here, I'm going to start with the person who's going to do the questions. And he's going to give you a short introduction of himself. And that's Mr. Tláloc López-Watermann.
Hi, I'm Tláloc López-Watermann. I'm a lighting designer. I'm a video designer. I'm a theatrical designer. I have gotten into more and more video streaming in the time of the pandemic. And one of the things the pandemic has brought me is to meet Todd and to become friends with Todd. And I am really, really grateful and super excited about having this conversation with him.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Isabelle Holmes.
Hello, I'm Isabelle. I am Todd's partner of 13 years. I'm his life partner, and I'm also his business partner. We work together. I'm an arts producer, arts manager, and I think that's it for now. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Isabelle. And next is going to be Mr. Kenn Jordan, who's staying up very late in the UK to be with us tonight. Thank you, Mr. Kenn Jordan.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for inviting me to be on the show with Todd, who I am known from office hours, but I've got to know a bit closer through some work we're doing together, and obviously my love for his music. Oh, and I'm supposed to talk about myself, but I'm talking about Todd. I do websites, or turn people's websites into being more working better for their business. I suppose really that's the main focus of the work that I do.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Liberty White.
Good evening, all. Thank you so much for having me here, Tony and Todd. TNT, so it's going to be a dynamite conversation tonight. And I am Liberty White. I run a video marketing agency, and I've grown to know Todd just through the office hours community. A talented person, but not only talented, but a very kind soul. I appreciate you, Todd, so much, and I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you, Liberty. And Mr. Jeff Francis. We can't hear you, Jeff.
That's because I missed the mute button. All right. Which is terrible because I'm an audio engineer, so I should be able to find the mute button. So I'm an audio engineer and an educator, and I work in live streaming, primarily in classical music. And Todd and I have lots of mutual acquaintances and musicians that we know, and I'm not quite sure if we've ever actually met and crossed paths in our lives in my time in New York, but now with Office Hours and the Office Hours Remotes band, I'm getting to know Todd really well. So looking forward to tonight.
Okay, thank you all. So my first question is, can you speak to what motivates you?
Of all the 8 million pathways that we could go down tonight, Tony, you find a good one to start. What motivates me? I guess if I had to really, we talk about it in terms of words and concepts. Connection motivates me. Growth, learning, education, lights of fire underneath my behind. But mostly a desire to connect with other humans. The opportunity to learn from them, the opportunity to contribute to them. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Thank you, sir. So my next question is, what lessons have you learned from your parents that you're using today?
Oh, goodness. I've learned the lesson of hard work. I didn't realize, I think for a while, how hard I actually was working, and because I always thought that I didn't work hard enough. They instilled a real value, a real work ethic in me. That's one thing I've taken from my parents. Also, my father was a high school teacher. He is now just a man who is growing older and wiser by the day, in his 94th year. He lives in a retirement facility where he plays a concert every Friday on the piano for everybody. There, when I go out there, I play with him. My mom left us about 6 years ago or so. So my father has always, he's given his life to teaching. He's an educator, and he's a supporter. He's somebody who rallies around the people he works with and encourages them, and is so proud of them. So I've taken that value from him over these many years, and I've become that as well. Somebody who wants to support and get behind and open up possibility for the people who I have the honor to support.
Thank you for that, Todd. And so I have I'm going to be honest. I have quite a few questions. So I'm doing a call out now. So let me do this. I'm going to look directly into the camera. Listen, I need you to ask your questions so that I don't have to ask mine, because your questions may be more interesting than mine. So I'm doing a call out. Go to conversationwithtonymobley.com, register, put your question in the Mukana chat, or go ahead and put your questions in YouTube. We have somebody looking at that. So if you put your questions there, but this is a call out to ask your questions. And so now I'm going to ask, let's see, I'm going to choose this one. Please talk about music that influences you.
Uh-oh. Okay. So well, yeah, I mean it's such a broad subject. I've been playing the violin since I was 4 years old. I grew up in the church. It was white church. So that was the hymns and all that stuff that kind of came in along with that, classical music and Broadway. I grew up with all that in my parents' bailiwick. In college, I ended up in a black church for about a year, and I learned so much about black music, especially gospel music in the church. And anybody who's known me has probably often heard me say that that American music is black music. So the origins of that music there in gospel, and then moving out into pop music and funk and rap and everything else, it's like it all comes from there. So that music influences me a ton. Jazz music influences me a ton. The spirit of rock and roll, in college, I spent a lot of time in my head. I was very interested in mathematical music, in intellectual music, in the intellectualness of classical music. And I began to choose, in my later college days, I began to choose away from that and into more of a groove-oriented music, which comes from other cultures. And so I began to move away from classical music, or even in the classical music that I did play, I moved into things with more rhythm and more body, more feeling in the body. So anything that makes me dance, anything that makes my heart sing naturally and gets past my head, that's music which probably these days influences me the most.
Fantastic. Tláloc, do we have some questions?
We certainly do.
Okay, so let's go with the first question.
The first question is from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona. Do you have a my big break story to share with us?
Oh goodness, that's cool. Thank you, Chris, for that great question. Oh man, I don't have one big break. I've got so many big breaks, and I just the good fortune in my life has been large. When I was 17, I walked into the opportunity to study with the most famous violinist in the world, named Jascha Heifetz. He was my teacher between like when I was 17 and 19 or 20. That's one. And then all the other opportunities that I've had in my life seem to be big breaks for me. But there was never, people ask me sometimes, are you famous? And I'm like, yes, I am, only to my mother. and and I've been very fortunate to learn from my colleagues and to call my colleagues people who have made a difference in our field. So I've had the opportunity to be on stage with Bruce Springsteen and Todd Rundgren and Joe Jackson, the last two with a band of my own creation. I've had the opportunity to tour with some of the kind of big changers, movers and shakers in what we call avant-garde classical music, people that really carried the art of classical music forward into this present day. So every one of those things has kind of been a big break for me. So I can't say, I guess I should say I don't have one big break, but each one I kind of treat like it, because every opportunity has been really, really felt very large to me.
Thanks, Todd. Next question.
The next question is also from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona. How young were you when you realized that your adult career would be as a violinist? What was your situation at that time?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Boy, y'all are going to get all the stories tonight. You're going to get the truth, all the things you didn't know about me before. I had three paths I could have gone by: the violin, network broadcasting, or a preacher. These were my three choices. I started studying at the age of 4, and at the age of 7, a woman came into our lives, my parents and myself, who was the dialogue coach for the kids in the Sound of Music movie. Oh, wow. And this woman became my godmother. She's the one who convinced my parents that I should be going to Catholic school instead of public school. She's the woman who put me up on a podium next to her as she would stand up and speak to the ladies of the Tuesday afternoon club on Melrose in Los Angeles. She was the woman who made me recite Proverbs and Psalms and memorize and stand in front of a microphone. She would take me on these gigs of hers where she would do book reviews and current events. And here I was, this little, 8-year-old, 9-year-old in a suit, reading from a book in his hands. Boy, the ladies loved that. And so this was part of my life between, age 7 to age 13. And there came a time where my parents actually made me choose one or the other. And for whatever reason that we don't need to get into, because this is not between me and my therapist, but it's probably better suited there someday if I ever get to that part of the story. But there are lots of reasons that I made that choice. And what's really interesting is that those three paths that I mentioned are all still concurrently active for me. Some of them more active than others, but they're always there kind of as part of my life. The one thing that I really wanted to do that I haven't gotten to do yet, and I'm not sure if I will or not. I really wanted to be an actor, and that's something I kind of repressed. Of course, later on, I realized that acting is something different than I thought it was. So I think I'll stick with the broadcasting and the motivational speaking and the lecturing when I have a chance, and the sharing, whatever I can do in the teaching domain. That's still really active for me. So I guess, Chris, the answer to your question is, I was 7, and I think I made the choice of a 7-year-old. And had I had 20 more years of wisdom, I might have made different choices. But as I grew into adulthood, I learned how to pull all these things together as much as I could, to be as much of a whole person as I could beyond just being a musician. How's that?
Thank you, Todd, for that. And I know that we have some more time for this conversation, but I want to interrupt this conversation for you, Todd, to share your website, your YouTube channel with us, to make sure that we get it in early.
Oh, sure, yeah. Well, I must say, Kenn Jordan here on the panel alluded before that we were doing some work together, and I must say that Kenn, in addition to doing wonderful things like building your logo, has also built my toddreynolds.live website, which has the YouTube channel embedded into it. So I'm very, very proud to share the work that Kenn has done for me to kind of put a container around my live streaming work. My other websites are, of course, my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Todd Reynolds, and also toddreynolds.com, which is the home for all of the work that Isabelle and I do together with Amplify This, our educational portal, and all the just general support of the work that I'm up to.
Okay. All right. We're going to go now to the next question.
This question comes in from Tláloc in Astoria. I wanted to know, do you think that aesthetics visually and orally reach different parts of the observer experientially? So I'm sorry, I wrote that question, and now I'm the one who has to read it. But what I want to know, because I'm a visual artist and I work in sound, and you're a sound artist that works visually, I want to know where those two things combine in your experience, or if they do.
The way I've always looked at it, I'm an amateur photographer, and I do enjoy that when I do it. And I also know that my life has been spent learning how to listen and being finely attuned to intonation, the sense of vibration, that occurs in the ears. And I haven't spent nearly as much time learning how to see. And I always think of it that way. Graphic designers, illustrators, fine artists, they are specialists in how to see, and I'm a specialist in how to hear. And so I think that these things intersect for all of us, because we these are kind of our for those of us who are fully abled in this way, with respect to all of our folks who do not necessarily have both of those senses available to them. We who are normally sighted and oral, well, we have to exercise these things in balance every day. So I think that they intersect for me, and they intersect with all of us. But in terms of my art form, I never thought that I could see like somebody else sees. Like, for instance, you. For instance, I could never really draw. Now, maybe everybody can draw, but I don't make sense of shapes in some of the ways that I'd like to, if that makes sense. So one of the ways that I do that is I collaborate with visual artists. And I really, really enjoy doing that. Did that answer your question, Tláloc?
Very cool.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a moment where those two things combine in any collaboration. And that's, to me, it's the sum of all of those parts that come together that create something that I couldn't see ahead of time. And that's what I find to be so wonderful. But I always think a little bit about where does that crucible happen in the observation of it? Where does it happen? Where does the mix happen? Where's the bowl where that happens?
Yeah, and I don't know that I can answer that because I can only answer it for me. And as far as I go, I'm just thinking of an instance in which this happens, but it kind of happens every day. If it's in the animation of an individual that I watch speaking, it's in a set design, right? It's it's in the framing of things I find beauty. Yeah, I don't know where the crucible is, and if there is a crucible. For me, everything gets very universalized. I'm one of these folks who tends to take the specific and makes it universal, like right away. Just I see something and I try to map it onto like everything and say, does it work like this for everything? So I kind of mix that stuff up a lot, and that's all I can say, of course, because I only have my experience to go with.
I think that I think we are prepared to share a little bit of what happened on your show on Saturday.
Hmm.
And this might be a good opportunity for that to be shared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question to you, Todd, but
Okay.
I'm going to ask Tláloc to work on bringing in some of the visuals and the music from Saturday that will help us kind of go back to. We don't have it. Okay. All right. And so I'm learning a new thing. So this is a new experience, and my mentor tells me that I should not apologize for things, but this is a lab. So my hope was that we would be able to share the visual. We're not able to share the visual. So what I'm going to do is direct you to go to toddreynolds.live, where you can participate in the conversation that Todd had, Todd's show on Saturday that he had. It was beautiful to listen to and to watch. And Tláloc participated in a lot of the visuals. And so we're going to keep going. And so my next question is, please talk about classical music and electronic music.
Okay. Here's what I'm going to say about classical music. Classical music, like all things that stand the test of time, has a real foundational reason for why it does that. I walked into, I teach at the Manhattan School of Music in New York. I walked into an orchestra rehearsal just as I was leaving school, like 2 Tuesdays ago. And I haven't been around an orchestra very much lately. I don't play classical music. I don't play what I call old historical music very much at all. I just don't. It's just, I do it for enjoyment sometimes, but I don't do it publicly. And I walked into this orchestra rehearsal in school. Boy, it was good to be there again. It really showed me the power of 70 people playing music together and the kind of largeness of sound. And classical music, whether it be small groups of people playing or a large orchestra playing, this history belongs to the past. It has every function known to us. It consoles us, it inspires us, it excites us, it challenges us. And like any piece of great art, it sustains repeated revisitings, repeated viewings, repeated listenings. And it ministers to our souls, and it causes us to think. That said, in our culture, up until probably the last 20, 30 years, there is a reverence for classical music, and kind of almost a resistance to move on into the future to classical music, which is written today. And that's the place where I have made my stand the past 30 years. It's what does classical music look like today? Who's writing classical music today? Could I be one of the writers of classical music today? And what would that look like? And it was this idea of planting a foot in the present day, knowing everything that we've done. You know, there's big movement in the 60s, just a huge turnover, starting with including John Cage and then all the Western Europeans. You know, it's like there's all this stuff from Europe that came over, some of it very intellectual, some of it very romantic and passionate. It really, really runs the gamut. But classical music in this past century really turned a corner and opened up into a different landscape. And it still remains that today. It is really full of so many voices. So that's my history. That's my lineage. My most recent lineage, I would say we would call it in the realm of something that we call minimal music. Minimal classical music also had an analog. Of course, it started actually in the visual art scene, minimal visual art. And it was this idea of really composing with small elements and using only those elements. And there was a move to strip the emotion out of the art, which is weird to hear said, even as I say it. But that minimal music, the composers that are associated with that movement are Steve Reich, Philip Glass, Terry Riley, Lamont Young. There's even some people who have not even received their due, who really started that movement back then. And all of that music, which was kind of composing with these small elements, has kind of a relationship to what we now call techno or electronic music or EDM or all these different styles that are now, you know, jungle and house and even a relationship to the repetitive nature of hooks in rap, you know, and the idea of using samples. This is what kind of drew me in. The idea that I could record my own music. I could use sounds, and I could make music sometimes in real time. That's kind of what I do now. Is I make music in real time, and compose music in real time. But folks have been doing what we call electronic music, wow, ever since the '60s, and some of it sounding like Bach. Wendy Carlos made this beautiful record of switched on Bach with Moog synthesizers. And then guy named Morton Subotnick made a great record called Silver Apples of the Moon with a synthesizer which sounded like nothing you've ever heard before. So there's this incredible beautiful garden of sound to be found when we use recorded music as instruments, as samples, as sound, and also when we use just sound from electricity, you know, which we then can turn into music. So that's where I ended up. Most of what I do, Tony, is to capture my own sound and record it and loop it and then play along with it and then see where that takes me, sometimes from just one note.
Very cool. Tláloc had a question. So before he comes with his question, I wanted to share something with you, Todd. So as you were talking, I had a Star Trek moment. And I can't remember what the song was, but there was some in the movie, the rebirth, the reworking of Star Trek. So there was a line in there where the officers were talking, and so they said they referenced a contemporary song, and their response to it was, "Oh, you meant the classic." And so that sort of really spoke to me in terms of what you were just saying about that whole experience. Go ahead, Tláloc. I'm sorry for.
And just more in addition to what's been talked about here, you know, as a person who works in the opera business, which in a lot of ways, you can't get more museum than the opera. But on the other hand, there is an incredible movement of new work that has been happening over the last 10 years. And Todd and I have talked some about this, and it's amazing. I think what it does is it pushes popular music, it pushes classical music, and it pushes contemporary music to push out of their own envelopes in ways where you have a piece that has some real classical overtones, but might have 3 Schedule 40 pipes that have been cut up into appropriate lengths and then banged on or rubbed with a bow or whatever it may be to make sounds that never came forth before. And so therefore you really sort of start to put a cog between these two kinds of music. And I think that's really important for innovation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Powerful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. The next question.
That is me. I'm so sorry. I got to thinking, what advice do you have for musicians who have well-developed talent, but know little about the business side of a successful career? That's from Chris Clark in Tempe, Arizona.
Great question, Chris. Again, with the great questions, Chris. Let's see. Can you just read it one more time for me, Tláloc? I'm sorry.
Certainly, I'll do a better job this time. What advice do you have for musicians who have well-developed talent but know little about the business side of a successful career?
Yeah. So the business side of all things is more about the human side of all things than the business side of all things. So if somebody, let's it's so much easier to do this in a storytelling manner. A person who shall remain unnamed because they do not exist came to me and said, "Hey, I've just graduated college. I'm moving to New York because that's where I hear all the great musicians go. So I'm going to New York, and I just don't even know what I want to do really. But I am a really, really, really good trumpet player, and I play classical music. This is what I do. So this is our setup for this person, and this person comes for a consulting meeting, we call it a coaching in our business. And we sit down and I tell them, meet as many people as you can and take them out for coffee and get to know them, and don't ask them for a gig, and begin to forge relationships in which you contribute and you receive. And then try to find ways of having fun together, of making some music together. Find out what's interesting between the two of you. And here we are just talking about regular old relationship building. It's kind of interesting. Those are the relationships that last the longest. And those are the relationships, even if they end up being transactional, which are founded on really, really great communication and trust. I found that in the music business, people hire you if you're easy to work with, and if you are friendly and kind, if you show up on time, which in New York is 15 minutes early, and if you're just a good person, because good people tend to like to hang out together. So in the business of music, in terms of the working musician, that's what I would speak to. If there was somebody coming into the business who was even more on the creative side rather than the recreative side, these are the kind of labels that I've come to for myself, right? Not classical music, but classic music. That makes Led Zeppelin and Johannes Brahms equal in position. for me? Does the music last and stand the test of time or not? And then what was I just saying? Oh goodness, I just lost it. I took a tangent and yes, in
That's
the
okay, Todd.
so the creative and the recreative side. The recreative side is those of us who practice and refine our craft and then go into work where we are recreating older music, which already is classic and has stood the test of time. Then there are the creative, the more creative side, who are trying to forge new paths inside classical music to kind of really kind of pull it apart and make it into something new. So if there's a creative person, I always say start, and now Isabelle is having to really lean on me to say this: publish, 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 make things. Because a person who's a maker
I'm going
makes
to interrupt
things.
you, Todd. I'm going to
Sure.
ask that Isabelle didn't raise her hand, but I'm going to ask her if she wants to speak to this. And I apologize for putting you on the spot, because the rules, we have rules, right? So I asked all the panelists to raise their hands if they want to make a contribution. And so I'm breaking the rules, but it's okay. I'm going to ask for forgiveness. And so, Isabelle, if you want to share something right now,
They're your
please.
rules, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for that, because I'm a little shy and I've been sort of holding my tongue a little. I'm like, oh, Todd, talk about publishing. Publishing is really important. Getting your music out there, especially if you're a creative maker, have it be heard. So I am sort of the financial person behind Todd and me, and I did a long sort of examination of our finances over a few years. And Todd released an album in 2011, and the album, I think, sold, I don't know how many copies, like, I don't know, 750 copies. I mean, it's like the album did not make money. So he did not publish the album to make money by selling the album, but by putting himself out there, by putting a little bit of money in a publicist, getting the album reviewed, being out in the public eye with this piece of work, Outerborough, which was a beautiful album. People wanted Todd. People hired him to play. He was traveling the world, and he had a really good financial year, 2011, 2012. So when we talk about publishing, it's not like sell your music, sell it for $1.25 on iTunes or put it on Spotify. It's just, it's your calling card. It's how people get to know you. And then from there, you don't know what's going to come out of that. And maybe nothing, hopefully something. But nothing, it's kind of like gardening. You will harvest none of the seeds you don't sow, and you may harvest seeds you sow. So you just sort of plant the seeds, and you also do it for yourself. You publish for yourself, work on your craft, get it out there, get it heard, get it reviewed, get it listened to. I don't have a music background. I have a dance background, but when I choreographed and then I put the work on stage, just the mere idea that someone was looking at it, I wanted to change everything. I was like, oh, there are people looking at this and now I can see it differently. So just getting ears on your work, it's really important. So publishing is my big suggestion for whatever it's worth.
Thank you, Isabelle. Appreciate that. And so, Todd, did you want to add any more to that, or we can go to the next question?
No. We've. I hope Chris is satisfied with that answer. Yeah, let's go.
All right, next question.
All righty. So our next question is from John Idelson in Monterey, California. Todd, what is the most unique performance you have presented?
It's got to be John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds. Do you all know this piece? Okay, so for those who don't know, first of all, John Cage is worth doing a deep dive. John Cage changed the face of music. John Cage thought that everything is music. If we're silent right now, for 15 seconds. You'll hear a symphony of sounds around you. And John Cage thought that all those sounds were equal, that they were equal in importance. Also very much a Buddhist in thought, and also a very great and famous amateur mycologist. John Cage changed the face of music, and this piece called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's kind of hard not to tell you about it without giving you a spoiler. But essentially, in this particular piece, a pianist, for instance, would walk out on stage with a score, put the score on the piano music stand, sit down, and look at the music and do nothing. And then there would be a second movement in which the same thing would occur. And then there was a third movement in which the same thing would occur, indicated only by the turning of pages. And of course, this was riotous, right? It's like what a big thing to do in the whenever this first came out. I forget when it was, in the 60s, I would assume. Anyway, 4 minutes and 33 seconds was the name of the piece. It's published by Peters, one of the biggest music publishers that we have. And the point of it was that in the concert hall, upon seeing and hearing nothing, you hear everything around you. And it draws attention to everything around you as music. Well, once I did this, I've done this a number of times. Did it at a museum. I got a really, really bad review for it too. Like a really bad review, as if I were posturing in the whole 9 yards. It's my worst review. And then also I did it in Michigan with a small new music ensemble. So I was the soloist. I was the violin soloist. So I was standing up in front of this new music ensemble that was all sitting down. And I walked out on stage and I bowed and we performed this piece. So if you ever have a chance to see 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it in itself is a historical piece. It's for me now a museum piece, because it really does show how music changed and why it changed. At that point, how we all started to think of music differently in the art world.
Okay, thank you, Todd, for that. And I've been told that the questions are piling up, so we're going to.
Oh, good. Let's go.
We're going to speed up a little bit. So,
right on.
Tláloc, next question.
Our next question is from David Brady in New York. What are some of the biggest technical and/or performance challenges you have faced over the past 18 months, and how have you dealt with them?
Over the last 18 months, the most profound technical and musical challenges? Was that the question?
Yeah. So technical and musical performance challenges that you've dealt with over these past pandemic months.
Yeah.
That you've been in.
Well, I mean, okay, so this is awkward. I haven't. Okay, yes. Here's the biggest one. I couldn't find a capture card for like 6 weeks. I knew that I wanted to jump online. I knew that I wanted to participate better. It actually originated with my students. When we all went indoors, I think it was in January or in March, I forget. But it's like all of a sudden I was not going back down to New York. And I wanted to be great for my students. So I wanted to look good. I wanted to be able to switch screens and show the programs that I teach them. And I wanted that very, very badly. So I started out, I was like, my father-in-law gave me the camera that I'm looking at you through right now. But cameras need a way to get into a computer. So there's this thing called a capture card. And I didn't know anything about this. So I just went to YouTube and learned everything I could. Little did I know that there was this group of folks in this thing called office hours, which is why I know all these wonderful people on screen. I didn't know that till a year after. But as I did that, the biggest technical, the technical problem was that nothing was coming over from China. So there was nothing available. Eventually, I did get some gear, and then that was the end of my problem. And there was no technical or musical problem. It was just a joy to figure out a different way of being with people using data. And actually, I've been like happy as a clam doing that over the past year.
Very cool. Isabelle.
I'm just Todd is a solo violin player. He went on a solo path. I'm going to ask if you wish that you could play with people more in the last 18 months. I don't want to like put that on you saying, I think you could have played with people more, but I don't know if the kind of aloneness of having to play, even though there is software that allows you to play with people remotely, it's not that
Oh, that's an
that
interesting
great.
question. Yeah.
But just always having to play alone these last 18 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess I'm a bit of a pragmatist in the sense that when I'm faced with a non-negotiable situation, I try really hard not to resent it and to instead swim with it and work with it, walking pliably as I can through that path. So the idea that I wasn't going to be able to play with folks, I got really okay with that, and I didn't wish for it to be different. Now that we are kind of approaching some sort of new normal, I am with people now, and I got to conduct. I do this thing called sound painting, which is this conducted sign language for conducting improvisers. We did a concert at school, and I got the great opportunity to work with the program in which I teach, with the students in the program for which I teach. And it was great to be with people again and to make music again. It's wonderful. It's just a different thing, kind of like being in the same room or being on a Zoom screen with folks. We find a way to make it work. So while I couldn't have it, I didn't wish for it. I didn't pine for it. And now that we're back, I'm really enjoying it. It's really nice to be back, for sure.
I also want to add that I don't know to what extent your involvement is with the Office Hours Band, but I know that you are involved and you do some interaction. Do you want to share that in terms of, because that is, I don't know what you're doing with them, but I know that you are involved with them and there is music involved. And so if you wanted to speak to that, just kind of piggyback on what Isabelle was just suggesting.
Oh, sure. I guess the one thing I will say is it's just, the Office Hours crew in general. This is a group of people who I've learned an incredible amount from, and because of the way the whole shebang is organized, supported, and kind of held up and together, it has been a huge. The word reward is coming to me, and it's not the right word, but it has been a huge boon to my life to have come across this group of folks, to know that there are then musicians therein, and people like Jeff Francis who are kind of in the world with me. We have even audio days on Tuesdays, and we talk about audio things. Just being with other musicians who are not in my scene, in my small little scene, it really broadens my mind out, and it's really happy making to work with them. The way that we've been working so far is the way that I'm used to working, living where I live. I haven't gone into recording studios to do my work for a long time because I have one here. So I record my work for others often. So that's kind of how we work, is we work together, but remotely. The band's called The Remotes. So just sending files to each other and working together on production, and everybody kind of has a job to do. It's been really fun doing that. It's getting more complicated, as the days wear on, because all of us get busy, thankfully, right? We're all going back to work just a bit. I see Jeff has got his hand raised.
Yes. Go ahead, Jeff.
You muted.
Sorry. Our meeting next week, Todd, show up with violin in hand, because we're going to try some actual online real-time experimentation for a few minutes.
Right on. Fantastic. Excellent. That'll be fun. That'll be
Jeff,
fun.
Jeff, could you speak a little bit more to that about what the remotes are doing? I mean, I know that that Victor has you guys kind of on lockdown, and can't share a lot of things. But is there something that you can share?
We have a couple of songs that are in progress at the moment. And as Todd was saying, it's a great thing that everybody is working. That keeps everybody busy, but it also makes the progress on the songs move slowly. So this past meeting, we were just playing around with seeing how things worked. We were literally, following a metronome on screen and had different people counting to see how things went. And of course, it was an abysmal failure, as anybody's tried to sing happy birthday on Zoom. So we're kind of going to play with something that's a little more free-form, improvisatory, with loose structure, so that sort of someone will direct people to take solos or melodies and kind of gesture from one musician to another across a loose structure, harmonic structure that is not rhythmic. We'll see where it goes.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to break another rule. So I'm going to call on Mr. Kenn Jordan. I want you to speak to how you're helping Todd as far as the tools that the tools that you have shared with me and doing for me, but I want you to speak to those efforts that you're doing for Todd.
Yeah, I suppose it started from when hearing Todd playing live on After Hours, and being really, really appreciative of that, but also knowing that this is his profession, this is his this is what he loves to do, but it's also to be rewarded for it. So in working with Todd and making Todd Reynolds .live so people who would like to contribute to Todd, so that he can continue sharing his wonderful music with us, but also being rewarded for it. So I suppose that's the kind of the seed of what the website is.
Thank you, Kenn, so much for that. Yes, Todd.
This is a really interesting question. I always think it's worth exploring. Musicians back in the day, we always came in through the kitchen, and if you're playing a wedding factory on Long Island, you still come through the kitchen. And performing musicians have always it's always been kind of a slog, for musicians to get paid unless they were part of an institution, basically. And the singers, songwriters, of course, and the bards of old are all used to going out and busking or doing the gig and putting the hat out and so on. And it's quite an analog these days when we have Patreon and some of these programs, and it's really difficult for me, who has been an artist who's played in institutions most of my life, taking on my own music in my career and trying to make seriousness out of it and make income out of it without necessarily going through the institutional path. It's a very interesting time for me because it's different. I'm in the last stage of my life. No, the last half of my life. I think we could probably say that. Can't get too far beyond that. So, but in this kind of later stage of life for me, I saying, hey, I want to cultivate and create community and connections with people, not subscription series in concert halls, but with people individually. And this is something that Kenn and I have had these conversations about. And I really do think there's this kind of special thing that happens when one invests in an artist personally. And I'm really beginning to like it. I'm beginning to like the idea that I can actually interact with one person and have communication with one person. This is why I like live streaming too. I can have an interaction with one person on a chat and really respond directly. I think that we've lost that sometimes. You know, we end up having relationships with artists through institutions or big concert halls or big arenas where we pay lots of money to go see them perform on a jumbotron. And there's something to be gained from us being more closely together, artists and those who invest in that art.
With this theme that you're sharing now, Todd, I think it's time for us to call upon a business owner who has, you know what, a marketing company. Miss Liberty White, do you have something that you want to share with us?
I'm sorry about that. I was trying to get my my unmute there. Well, just from the marketing perspective, are you asking, or because I have been dumping questions in Mukana because I'm like, Todd, talk to us about you just even your creative process, because from what I've been able to watch and then see, and then even just like the whole fusing, I'm like, how does he do it? And I've also shared with you of like, you have a great radio voice, and I asked, did you do radio before? So I'm just wondering how you put all these creative pieces together.
Wow. I still want to do, I love the microphone, and I would love to do anything that is connected with communicating through the voice. I'm not a great singer, but I'll talk your ear off, Liberty. So any that's I'm definitely the when I hear Courtney Gooden, one of our friends who on office hours, or Bill Davis, or any of these people with these kind of gorgeous voices, I'm like, yeah, I want to be them when I grow up. Anyway, my creative process, Liberty, it goes kind of like this. I've heard a lot of music in my life. When I hear a pitch, I generally know what that pitch is, so I can kind of hear it. And there are all these styles that have kind of gotten their way into my life. And I'll share with you just something very. I happen to have a violin here. Who knew? But let me show you. Let me just show you my creative process for what it's worth. I'm just going to get a nice kind of gorgeous lush sound here without let's see. I'm not hearing it at all. Why am I not hearing that? Well, that's not good. Heard it before.
Well, we hear it. We hear it, Todd.
No, you're just hearing a violin through a microphone. So I may have to work on this a little bit more to
we have effects, Todd.
Oh, you do? It's that yeah. I don't. Hold on, let me fix that, because I have to hear it too. There we go. Hold on. Luckily, we have the technology. Now I hear it. Thank you, Jeff.
And we hear it.
Yeah, got you. Now I'm clear on what's going on. So here's a violin. It's your basic garden variety violin. Designed in the 1700s, evolved all the way through till now, but it's made of wood. It looks just the way you would expect a violin to look. It's very pretty and shiny. And so this is what I call an 18th century piece of technology. Then I've got a laptop in front of me. I'm actually, I use a program which I love, and it allows me to record myself in real time in about a dozen different ways, and bring in drums and all sorts of different pre-recorded sounds. And one of the things that I can do is just play a note and then have it come back to me. So this is kind of how. Now in this particular case, when it came back at me a few octaves higher than I played it. So this is what we would call, in some cultures or languages or ways of thinking a mistake, but it's not. So this is just a piece of Play-Doh to be played with. It's even reversed. Kind of funny, right? Kind of sounds a little funny. But one of the things I can do with it, I can play another note into it. So the wonders of technology allow me to basically stretch out the sound by half or compress it by half, thereby changing its pitch. So it goes exactly 1 octave higher. And everything can kind of fit in pockets of sound, right? So my creative process, Liberty, is listening and then looking for ways to contribute to the music in such a way that it makes something that I enjoy. And then I count on the idea that somebody out there might enjoy it along with me. That's kind of it. And my creative process ends up being me making all this music and recording it so that then I can reorganize it and re-edit it and make something new. So with what I've just played for you right now, I can keep that and save it, and then maybe use that tomorrow or the next day or the next day and say, oh, maybe a nice cymbal would go with this. Maybe a nice drum loop would go with this. Maybe French horn could go really well over this. Or if, God forbid, George Lucas calls me and asks me to write the music for his next movie, I could pull this out and say, hey, George, listen to this. Isn't this cool? Then I can just make music all day with this. Then eventually I can let it go away and just let it have its own life. That's kind of my creative process. Make little building blocks, put them together, and eventually see where they take me.
Thank you. So that was so beautiful. Even the first note that you were like, wait, I was like, that was epic. And I thank you, Todd. And I think it goes back to what you were saying, answering before, and Isabelle shared about publishing. Like, I like that whole idea, because when you played it and you said that you wait for it to come back, it's like, to the artists out there, like, publish, and like it might not come back exactly the way that you designed, but it's gonna come back, and wait for that music to sit and percolate. So that's even what I got from you playing and the answers that you shared before. So thank you for that.
My pleasure.
All I'm going to say is toddreynolds.live. That's it.
October 23rd. That's our next one.
Say it one more time, Todd.
October 23rd, 3:00. We'll do another stream.
That's going to be another
all the crew that has been playing together
at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard Time. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
All righty. Next question is from YouTube. Is from YouTube.
Cool.
Beauty Bubble on YouTube asks, Todd, your music conjures up so much rich imagery in the mind, and you draw to lyrics and poetic readings when playing. Or do you draw from lyrics and poetic readings when playing?
No. It's kind of weird because it's really separate for me. It is so separate. Like when I play, I don't see things. Of course, I think we all probably have heard of this word synesthesia, which is the ability that some people have to see color in pitches and actually see what's the word, Tláloc? Just kind of and it's not templates, but see color palettes, and then see moving color images. That's synesthesia, and it's really connected to the vibration and the frequency of different notes. Don't have any of that. Don't have any real connection to the spoken word or the written word when I'm playing. The things are really separate for me. By that same token, I'm probably much, much more impacted by the written word, the spoken word, poetry, and by the combination of visuals and text in terms of film and storytelling. I'm much, 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 much more impacted by that than I am by music. Interesting, right? So Beauty Bubble, they're kind of separate for me. And I think it's cool. So the thing is, though, that whenever somebody says to me, I see things when I listen to your music, I could not be happier, right? Two of the things that I think make a musician just kind of jump for joy in their soul. When somebody says, I put on your CD again. I listened to that piece of music that you wrote again. That makes my soul jump for joy that somebody didn't listen to it once, but they wanted to hear it again, and they found another reason to pull that into their consciousness. And I forget what the other one was, but whatever we were talking about. Boy, I'm losing trains of thought these days. But yeah, they're quite. Oh, and the other one is when somebody says, "I see things." I see things when I listen to your music. Then that means that there's neurons firing, and that I've had some kind of direct. I've been part of some direct experience in the mind of another.
Thank you, Todd, for that. Jeff, I'm gonna let Jeff go, but after Jeff finishes, we're going to actually be in speed round. So we're going to be up in the ante, and I might have to cut you off on a couple of your answers, Todd, if they're not
2-word answers. I will give you 2-word answers.
All right.
We'll go for 2-word answers. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Todd, everything you just talked about reminded me of one of my favorite quotations, Aldous Huxley. After silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful.
You see? Yes.
Very
go,
powerful.
Tony. I'm ready. Tláloc, let's go. I'm ready.
All right. Here we go. Speed round.
All right. Chris Clark from Tempe, Arizona says, who were your early influences and supporters? How have they shaped your career and development?
My early influences were my parents. There's no question. They taught me what they wanted me to know. And how well my parents gave everything to me. I'm an only child. They put it all on me. They gave me everything. So let's just start there, and we'll stop there. Go ahead.
Next question is from David Brady in New York. For Todd and Isabelle, I have not heard of Amplify.
Amplify this
before,
yeah.
but I am intrigued. Can you share the elevator pitch?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Amplify This began in early COVID. All of the summer programs, all the summer musical programs had been canceled, and there was obviously a need for musicians to kind of wake up and say, like I think there were a lot of musicians who wanted to figure out how they could contribute, right? Broadway was canceled, everything was gone. So Amplify This was our way of putting together some courses, some avenues for consulting, for coaching, for supporting people in leveling up their virtual presence. That's kind of what we started with, was level up your virtual presence. Let me tell you about cameras. Let me tell you about microphones. Let me get your Zoom, help you get your Zoom, support you getting your Zoom thing together. I had a number of students from the past who also were doing that, kind of like right alongside of me, and some colleagues who were looking at those possibilities. So Amplify This began that way. So Amplify This is the name of our educational portal. And we're working with some new possibilities right now to teach some very specific courses and do some stuff coming up. So we haven't been as active as we had hoped to be over the past 6 or 7 months as things have wound down and gone back to in person. But we're working on what's coming up next. Go, Tláloc.
Isabelle, did you want to speak to that?
No, that about covers it. Thanks, Todd.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Todd. All right, next question.
The next question is from Liberty White here on the panel. Knowing what you know about music or life in general, what advice would you give to your younger self, if any?
I love that question. Don't try so hard, Todd. It all works out in the end. I've worked really hard to satisfy what I think needs to be satisfied. And the older I get, the more I run into the notion that is a ghost and cannot be achieved, much like the idea of perfection. My teacher, Jascha Heifetz, said to me and to us, our class, once, he says, if you have to practice more than 2 hours a day, maybe you want to find another profession. And that's kind of interesting because this is a virtuoso violinist, number one. And number two, all of us in the violin world or the piano world or the classical music world, most of us have practiced in our lives 8 to 10 hours a day. That's kind of how you get your craft, is to do that. I was never that person. I could never do that. But when Mr. Heifetz said that, what he meant by that was, there is life to be lived too. So I think I would say to my younger self, relax, chill out. Don't work so hard. You got one life. Yeah.
Next question.
Next question is from Jeff Francis, also here on the panel. Favorite composer, musical work, and performer?
Say that again?
What's your favorite composer, musical work, and performer?
Not even possible, David.
That was Jeff Francis.
I'm sorry, Jeff. That's crazy.
I know, that's why I wrote it.
Know it. I wrote it. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I can come close. Favorite performer? No.
Okay, let me change it then.
Okay. I will give you a
this with my
do-over.
student.
Yeah,
Okay. I just say whatever musical entity, act you want, all time, right now, and the most important one is the only one you actually need to answer, guilty pleasure.
Oh, what's my guilty pleasure?
Musical
Okay.
guilty pleasure.
Oh, my musical guilty pleasure. Okay. So okay. Oh God, you're gonna hate me for this one, Jeff. I have none. I have no guilty pleasures because I'm out about them all. So I don't care whether it's theme songs or whatever. Isabelle, is there anything that you can think about that I might be slightly embarrassed about listening to and loving? I mean, I even love the Rick roll. I mean, it's like,
No, well, I have
ta-da!
a
It's like,
I have a ringtone on my phone that goes do do do, and Todd and I will catch ourselves singing
my
the Price
goodness.
is Right theme song together, and then
Oh my
when
goodness.
we sing over and over because it's a loop,
Oh my goodness.
do,
Yeah. Okay. Hold
then
on.
we find ourselves
I just pulled my
realizing how
monitors
good
out.
it
Hold
is,
on. I
and we're
gotta
like,
play this
that's
for
a
you
really good theme
because
song.
this
So
is so important.
what are you doing?
Sorry. Technical malfunction, wardrobe
Oh.
malfunction. There we go. Okay, so let me see if I can real quickly. You remember? Anyway, it's the perfect setup loop. And so this earworm will get in our heads, and we will be hanging out with this forever. So that's one of my favorite guilty pleasures, Jeff. There we go.
I feel
Next
like
question.
I'm back in grade school, homesick.
Because that's what we did. Because that's what we did when we were in grade school, homesick. Oh, because that's what mom would be watching. Oh, that's so crazy.
Next question.
Yeah.
Next question is from Chris Clark again in Tempe, Arizona. Have you ever experienced discouragement, disillusionment, or self-doubt about your path? If
Oh
so,
my.
what or who helped you through those downtimes?
Yes, yesterday, Isabelle Holmes. I tell you, it's like
We have a lot of those lately.
Yeah, we have. Yeah,
It comes up. Everyone has demons. Everyone has shadows.
Everybody has demons. Everybody has
Even Todd Reynolds
has shadows,
and me.
especially Todd Reynolds. Yeah, the I am a generally positive person. Ted Lasso has nothing on me. Darn it. Although I gotta admit, no, it's written better than my life, I think. But you know, he has his panic attacks. It is rough. It's rough for anybody being a public figure. I'm not a real public figure. I'm not famous, but I live my life in the public. My job is performance. My job is writing music, which would then get performed, right? So it's like I've always been a person on display. I often felt like the dancing monkey, you know, when my parents would haul me out and say, "Play for the company," you know, play for them, play for them, play for them, and they were trying to get me to be generous with my talent. I don't believe in the word talent, by the way, but they were trying to get me to be generous with it, and but it's rough being. It is rough taking the position of performing. So I go through that stuff all the time. Who helps me through it? Often, you know, Isabelle and I. I'm very fortunate to say that through our 13 years together, we have grown so much to the point that we are doing better at holding the stress ball for each other, and kind of really being there to support. And yes, it happens as recently as yesterday or the day before, really. So even though I function sometimes as a coach and support other people in getting through some of their stops and blocks, I got my own. So it kind of goes like that.
Thank you, Todd.
And
Next
he
question.
also has some coaches
Oh, I'm sorry.
that
Go
have
ahead,
helped him.
Isabelle.
I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
Oh, yeah.
He has some coaches that have helped him through some stuff too. So
Yeah. Coaches, mentors, therapists. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Tláloc, do we have any YouTube questions left?
Let me check real quick.
The reason why I'm asking is because I have a feeling that with only 6 minutes left, that we're not going to get to all of the Mukana questions. And so what I'm hoping for is that if we have YouTube questions, we can get those, and then perhaps we can push the Mukana questions to notes. I don't know if that's a possibility or not.
It certainly is a possibility. There are no more YouTube questions. So let me know what you'd like me to do.
Okay, so about how many questions do we have left?
We have exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Wow.
So we have 9 questions left, and I still have probably about 7 questions left
That's only 16, though.
in 5 minutes, though, Todd. So this is what I propose. I'm going to ask us a question, and Tláloc, I'm going to ask you to scan for 2 good questions. Well, I'm not going to say 2 good questions. 2 questions that have high votes. How about that?
Okay, let's go there. Let's go there. May I start with David Brady's question? Do you want to read it, Tláloc, or you want me to
I
just
thought
go
Tony
for it?
was going to ask one first, but okay, sure.
Oh, go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I can ask my question last.
So David Brady asks, if you could only choose one of the 7 modern modes to work in, which one would it be and why?
It would be Dorian. And the reason would be because I love the way it sounds. That's kind of it. Kind of like, D minor, the saddest of all keys.
Okay, next question.
Next question is from Eric Price in Kansas City. How have the events of the last couple of years impacted your approach to composing and performing?
How the last couple of years, mostly it has let me, it has encouraged me to think more about what I haven't done. It has encouraged me to think more about the idea that any blocks or stops or fears that I have need to be dealt with and put away, so that I can actually move out into the world in full power as myself in whatever ways that I want to do that. It's also caused me to think that time is short, and that messing around and not doing what I'm called to do is probably a bad idea. I need to get to work.
Thank you, Todd. And so as I prepare to ask my question, I want all of the panelists to prepare for their final statements after I do my question, and then I'll be calling on you for your final statements, and then we'll hear from Todd, and then we will say goodnight to all of those who are participating in this experience. So my final question is, you are speaking to the world. What do you want them to know?
That I want them to know, I want the world to know that that there is nothing in this world more important than being with one another. There's nothing more important in this world than learning how to talk to one another beyond all of the uniqueness that we have personally, in our viewpoints, in our experience, in our levels of trauma, in our directions of healing. There is a sameness to it that when accessed, leaves room for deep relationship between us.
Very cool. Thank you. And final words, Jeff Francis, you're going to start us off.
So I'm going to remind you when you just said it's time to get to work, that you shouldn't work too hard.
Okay.
I'm also going to
All right.
thank you for the Spinal Tap reference, and I'm glad that we are beginning our journey and getting to know each other. I look forward to working with you and making music and being friends forever.
Thank you, Jeff.
Isabelle.
Hi. Closing remarks. Thank you for including me on a panel. I've never done this before. Todd, you continue to be an inspiration to me. I love you very much. And it's been a pleasure sort of being part of this. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kenn Jordan, who's up very late in the morning in the UK. Thank you, Kenn.
Well, I want to say that, but thank you, Todd, for sharing your wonderful music with us, and it has inspired me to start playing music again. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Kenn. Ms. Liberty White.
Todd, I thank you for tonight because one, like you're such a phenomenal storyteller, and the humanity that you bring to that part when you said earlier when you were answering the question and speaking to, people who are in the business or who are an artist. I think it was Chris Clark's question. They're an artist, but the business savvy, and you brought it back to humanity. Like that just permeates through all that you've shared tonight. And I thank you for that centeredness and just sharing your gift with the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Liberty. Mr. Tláloc López-Watermann, the producer of Conversations with Tony Mobley.
Todd, I want to thank you so much for coming tonight and speaking with us. And I want to also thank you for making me understand things in a deeper way that I have not understood about music, about life, and about communication and collaboration amongst this group of people on this planet. And I really appreciate you. And I hope that our collaboration can continue.
And the final words from the maestro himself.
The maestro. So funny. When I went to Italy and I conducted an opera for the first time, they called me maestro, and it was like, and it wasn't a joke anymore. And it was weird. It was weird because the level of respect afforded a maestro I didn't really think that I deserved over there, in the great halls where classical music comes from. Anyway, boy, it has been Tony, I've watched your shows ever since you started, and every person, whether it be Tláloc or Jeff or Andy. It's like there's this incredible opportunity here to really get to know somebody's intention in their past, and I'm very grateful for you having extended the invitation to me to come tonight, and to Isabelle, my dear partner, who I'm so happy to have on screen with me, and it's just great. It's great to be here and to be part of this thing that you have created. So thank you for that invitation. And then to everybody else on this screen, Tláloc, Liberty, Kenn, Jeff, and you, Tony. There's such a great amount of depth that I've experienced since I happened upon this community, thanks to Chris Comfort, my friend Chris Comfort, in April when I think I first came in. There's been such depth and learning here. So a big thank you to all of you for the experiences that I've been afforded through getting to know you. And I look forward to much more of that in the future. And to anybody who's listening tonight, thank you for your ears and your interest in this guy's being and ideas. I appreciate it, and I send my love out to anybody who's listening and watching. I think that's probably enough.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you all so much for being here. And so I want to give special thanks to Kimberly Mobley, the Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay, and the Office Hour members, DVE Store, Liminal Entertainment Technologies, Byte Hive, VDO360.com, ApproveForLoan.com, Mr. Kenn Jordan, Elms Park, Jonas Patel, Aaron Huselich, Chirag Cheetah, David Brady, Marcus Lee Folk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manolo Lozano, Jeffrey Powers, and Tláloc López-Watermann, CWTM producer. And so my final word to you, Todd, is thank you, Todd Reynolds, for your heart. Because when I began this conversation, you were one of the first people who reached out to me, and you kind of held my hand by encouraging words all along the way. And so whatever Conversations with Tony Mobley gets to become, you are a part of that. So again, thank you so much for your support and encouragement. Next week, I'm going to have a one-on-one conversation with a dear friend. His name is Lamel McMorris. And we are going to, this is going to be a first for Conversation with Tony Mobley, in that I haven't had a one-on-one conversation before. And so this young man has a really powerful story. And so we're going to share that story on next week. And so coming soon, more interesting people, educators, mental health professionals, filmmakers, musicians, and other creatives. We have interesting conversations with people. Conversation with Tony Mobley is engaging in real conversations with real people. We hope that you please like and subscribe, and go to Conversation with Tony Mobley and participate in our website. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all panelists. Thank you again, Todd. Everyone, thank you so much. We are going to leave this conversation and start a new conversation in after hours. So if we can ask someone to put the YouTube link, put the Zoom link in YouTube, to those who might want to follow over to after hours, please put that link in YouTube so that those who might be listening and watching and want to come on over to after hours can do that. Again, thank you so much, Todd Reynolds. Thank you all so much, panel guests. And we will see you next Wednesday when Conversation with Tony Mobley continues. Take care and good night. Thank you all.